This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason, to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Shafer.
Welcome to the How to Run for Office podcast from My Campaign Coach. Texas has the earliest primary election in the nation this year, and we're just under 4 weeks out. As of this morning, we'll know in 4 weeks who the winners and losers are. This week's episode is a little bit different and shorter than most because I want there to be one specific takeaway. And I want to make sure that you guys get to listen to my story about how I got involved in politics, the first election I ever worked on. When it came down to it, 12 votes that changed the rest of my life. Before I get rolling, I want to give you all a heads up that earlier this week we launched the My Campaign Coach Minute podcast. It's 60 to 90 seconds long that goes out every business day, and it's available on mycampaigncoach.com, iTunes, and you can even add it on your flash briefing on Amazon Alexa's platform. So if you have their Tap, their Dot, their Show, one of those cool automated tools that you can, the robots that you can let into your home from Amazon, you can put it on there and have it as part of your flash briefing every day. Each episode focuses on a specific strategy or tactic that'll help you win whatever campaign you're working on. And I think it's going to be a great complement to the longer form interviews and coaching that we do here on this podcast every week. All right, so I want to take you back in time to 1996 and that fall as we're coming up to the general election. There was a presidential, it was Bob Dole versus Bill Clinton. Texas at that time, at least most of the rural state, was still pretty blue. Whereas today we're known as a pretty Republican state with a lot of our districts going that way uniformly. Many of them are not even competitive for Democrats. Back then that wasn't the case. And in my hometown, in my home district, House District 59 there in Texas, it had been a blue district for as long as I can recall. And Allen Place was the guy that was the Democrat incumbent, had been there for quite a while. Even my home county of Erath had only started turning red in recent past, and some of the southern parts of the district were still pretty blue. So there was this lady named Becky Farah who was a good friend of my parents, and to this day, I just love Becky to death. She's an amazing woman and has been a mentor to me and just a wonderful blessing in my family's life. And thankfully, she stayed involved in politics for a long time. So she was running for state rep, and she was a hard-working campaigner. She and her husband and her family, back then George W. Bush was governor, and he came out and we did a fundraiser on my grandparents' farm where George W. Bush is out there, and it was really awesome. And so I started getting involved in politics because my parents were helping Becky, and we were going out there, and I started knocking doors when I was 10 years old, getting out there and knocking doors supporting my friend Becky Farah for state rep. And at the time, I was a pretty cute kid. I was 10 years old. I was out there. I was, dressing up and going door to door. My mom was pushing my younger brothers around the stroller, and I'd run up with a palm card and knock on the door and to ask folks to vote for my friend Becky Farah. And so we busted around our little area there in Stephenville and had a wonderful time. I just fell in love with her and with politics. And then it came around to election night. And on election night, we lost. And it wasn't one of those losses where it's a landslide where you're just like, well, okay, well, we tried. It was a loss by 70 votes. And so we ordered a recount. Becky got the Secretary of State to do a recount. And when it came down to it, coming around to December 11th, we lost by 12 votes. It was 15,399 to 15,387. Now, that's a very, very small margin. And as you can imagine, that was a huge turnout that was largely driven by the presidential election, as you might expect, much like what we would have seen in 2016 and other contested presidential elections. So moving forward from December 11th, I don't remember this part, but my dad tells me that he came into my room one night, and I was laying there on my bed, and I was crying. And my dad sees his 10-year-old son crying on his bed. I was like, Raz, what's wrong? I said, well, Dad, we lost. I really wanted Becky to go to Austin. And my dad looked at me and said, Raz, it seems like you enjoy this politics thing, but I got to tell you, you got to be ready because you're not going to win every one, even when you work hard. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, I know that. Even as a 10-year-old, I understood that I wouldn't win everything I jumped out for. But I told him we knew 13 people who didn't vote for Becky. And what broke my 10-year-old heart was that if you'd have told us at 7 a.m. when the polls opened on Election Day that it was going to come down to that kind of margin, to 12 votes, there's not a person on that campaign that couldn't or wouldn't have gone out and found 13 votes to get them out to the polls to make sure they voted for Becky because, dang it was going to be close and we need every one we can get. But that's looking in the rear view, right? We know that now. We know that 21 and a half years later, that 13 votes would have made all the difference. And I'd go back and redo that in a heartbeat if I could. But we don't have that opportunity. The lesson that I learned there was one that coaches have been teaching in locker rooms for as long as there's been football or probably any other game. It's one that warriors tell each other when they're going out for battle. You leave it all on the field because once you get done, there are no second opportunities. So for my friends here in Texas, coming up in just less than a month, you've got the next about 28 days, 27 days now to get out there and bust it, to get out there and do everything because some of you guys are going to win and some of you guys are going to lose. And at the end of the day, there's going to be this moment that I always look to and always have ever since that election where I lost by 12 votes supporting Becky Farah. And there's this moment that it's kind of a ritual for me. I'll get done working the polls or helping out wherever I was. I'll get done. I'll get back to my house or even just the gas station bathroom on the way over to the victory party or the watch party. There's this window between the polls close at 7 p.m. and when the early vote starts coming in, about 15 to 30 minutes later. And what I do every time is I'll go, I'll wash my face, I'll look in the mirror. Hopefully I'm wrung out and ragged. I've been working all day. I've been working my butt off getting up to the election, and so I know that I've done everything. I can look in the mirror, say, you know what? I did everything that I could. There's not 12 votes that could make the difference that I could go get. And what I want for all of y'all that are working in elections this cycle, especially my friends here in Texas who got such a short time frame, is I want you guys to be able to have that same moment and that you did everything. Because at the end of the day, some of the listeners are going to win and some are going to lose. What I want is to know that you did everything you could. Because looking forward from here, the wonderful thing is that in spite of the fact that we have this hard deadline, this isn't a life or death thing in the sense that you get to fight on. I expect you to fight on. When Becky lost by 12 votes, she didn't just stop fighting. She stayed involved and stayed fighting battles of different sorts and winning most of them for the last 21 years. And the beauty of that is to know that if you do everything you can, that you're going to be able to move the ball forward for the movement. This is not just about you. The reason you're running, at least it shouldn't be all about you. And so as you're looking forward past the barrel of this election, I want you guys to think about how God can use you for the movement, how you can be a weapon that can help move the movement forward and do battle in this political world. If you're doing that, and if you have that concrete mission that's based in ideology, that's based on principles, then as you look forward past this, there is something past it. For some candidates, especially the ones that are focused on ego, and that's why they're in the race, it's really, really tough to look past the election because that's the end if you don't win. That's just going to kill the ego. But my hope is that you guys who are listening to this are a different sort. At least the ones I've talked to are. And that's what I'm hoping, the kind of listenership I'm hoping to build. So I'll tell you what I'm doing the next several weeks. As I'm spending my time helping candidates, giving advice, getting out there and working the polls, volunteering, I'm picking my races. I'm picking the ones where I can make a difference and where I want to really invest myself. I'm not going to be spreading my time thin between 15 or 20 different races. I'm picking the couple, probably just the one, where I believe that I can have the biggest impact. And I'm going to go all in. Any time that I have away from my 4-month-old to get out there and work, I'm going to. Whether you're a volunteer or a campaign staffer or a candidate, you got to pick the activities that are going to have the best yield in number of votes. And that's an individual campaign strategic decision you got to make. In a lot of cases, it's getting out there and knocking doors. In a couple of weeks, it'll be for candidates here in Texas. Once early voting opens, a lot of that will be standing polls. So get out there and make sure you leave it all on the field, because I'll tell you what, there are a few things that have caused me more frustration than the campaigns where I know that I could have done more. And Becky's is the number one example of that. I really feel like God used that loss to help push me into politics. It's one of those weird things where a 10-year-old coming away being more passionate about politics after that kind of loss is kind of a weird thing. But I believe that's one of those things that guy used to change my life and really port me towards politics as an area that I wanted to serve, that I can make a difference. And so for that, I'm grateful for it. I think that it's yielded some good things for me. But I'll tell you what, if I could go back to 1996 and that November day and I could send Becky to Austin by finding 13 people and dragging them out to the polls as a 10-year-old, I'd go back and do it. All right, guys, this is, as somebody that's never played football or spent time in a football locker room, this is my version of a low-key halftime talk. You got a little bit of ball left to play, and my hope is that y'all are going to make the most of it. If you don't, you'll regret it forever. As long as you're involved in politics, you regret having not done everything you could. So get out there, raise the dollars, knock the doors, and let's see if we can go win these races here in a couple weeks.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.